Hey guys, and welcome to my review of Starcadia Quest. I have it all set up here. I'm ready to talk to you about it. Is it good? Is it something that you want to buy perhaps at retail? Well, I'm reviewing just the retail version here, so I'm going to let you know. If I was to list a top 10, this would definitely actually be in it. This is the worst I have in my collection. As always, I want to start out with a huge thank you to my Patreons and YouTube members. Without their support, all of these independent reviews, news, all the videos that I do would not really be possible. It is in large part thanks to them that I'm able to bring the quantity and quality of video that I do. So thank you to them. Thank you to all of you down there that are watching the ads, pausing that ad blocker, clicking on any of the merchandise links or anything like that, or just commenting, letting me know that I'm doing a good job or that it's appreciated or anything like that. Trust me, you guys all rock, and I'm very, very appreciative of it. Now, let's go ahead and get into the review. Okay, so I want to start things out with the rule book because this is kind of your first experience with the game. In general, I try to go kind of as I progress. It's literally just kind of the notes I did. So as I'm reading the rule book, I might write a note like, did I like it or did I not? In this case, I really liked it. CMON almost always, not always, but almost always does a very good job with the rule books. They will have stuff like a summary on the back. It kind of tells you a little just kind of a synopsis. What's nice about one of these is you really understand high level. Sometimes you can get into the nitty gritty of things, not so much with this game, but in other games. And sometimes just having that bubbled up into kind of okay, here's really in general what you're doing can be very helpful. But they'll include stuff like that. They'll always have, let's say, an index, right? So they'll have an index on the back, super useful. They'll have call out boxes like this throughout, which is, again, very helpful to see different, diagrams laying out everything. The font is big. It's easily readable. It's just very well put together, and I was happy with the whole thing. So the rulebook, definitely a plus. Now, the next thing you're going to notice is when you first set up the game, or if you're just unboxing it and are very thorough, is how crap all of the components are. The miniatures are great. These miniatures are the best chibi miniatures I have ever seen. They are fantastic. Very, very good miniatures. Everything else is lackluster. If you notice here how much these trays are already kind of bending up, you can see them here. They just bend like a crazy degree. Even these tiles tend to bend. You can see, especially right here, a lot of wobble. The tiles are bendy. And very squishy. The trays that you have are very thin and just warp completely. It's really rather unfortunate that the components and what you're playing with are just in the way they are. All the cards here are quite bendy. So if I'm going to do this, you'll see, do you see that gap there? That gap is the bend. So this is curved this way. And now that I flipped it, that's curved that way. So when I flip it back over again, now they're all curved like this. Very bendy cards, bendy tiles, bendy player boards. Very much disappointed in that. Especially the player boards as you're messing with it a lot and just having the warped cards on here on a warped board. It just, it doesn't feel quality at all. It just, interacting with the game when you're not touching a miniature is not good. Definitely needs to move up just to get to adequate. It's very below average, very below adequate, and not really acceptable. One of my biggest beefs actually is look at this board here. You got to do better than that. This is the worst I have in my collection, by far. Now, inversely, the storage solution is great. It's really good. This is one of the better storage solutions out there. If I was to list a top 10, this would definitely actually be in it. All the tokens have a spot for it. For the most part, I wasn't able to fit quite all of the tokens in here. So there's a few starter ones kind of in the bottom, but all this comes out very nicely. Normally this is pretty full, right? And then on the bottom, You have your miniatures, and then you have your big cards here. You have the kind of the shuttles, more cards here, and more tokens and dice. And that's it. And it again, it's really good. The trays are very thick. They're not really like flimsy. You're not going to break them or anything. The storage solution is awesome. So rare is it for these companies to think about a consumer's storage, not just their shipment to either a home or a retail, that it's really quite nice. One of the better solution options out there right out of the box. There's no need to get a third-party solution. It'll work great. No snap-in trays for your miniatures, nothing like that. It's just really good. Okay, so the next thing you're going to notice is there is no scenario book. So there's nothing that's saying like, oh, you're, out chasing this guy and then suddenly you come across a derelict spaceship and so you board it and then you have to do that. None of that. What I just said is more story than this entire game has, because there isn't one. And in fact, the theme is really loose when it comes to actual gameplay. So this theme of the art style and all that has a lot of character, but it's all shallow. What do I mean by that? So you have these cards that kind of explain how to set up a map or whatever, and it's always random, right? So you just have these random placements, and it's just always going to be that way. But it doesn't really tell you what it is you're doing. So you'll have a quest, typically 2 regular PvE quests, Quest 1 and Quest 2, and then 4 PvP quests. More on that later. With these quests, let's say this one, Jam Transmission, it's scenario 2B. This one says, to reveal a quest token, players must end an activation on a computer terminal containing the tokens without any enemies in their space. This quest is completed once the green tokens and red tokens are revealed. What those tokens actually are, I mean, I know what they are. They're just these things. But what they represent at the computer terminal, maybe you're hacking something, maybe not. I'm not quite sure. But it can get even more confusing than that, or I guess less solid in theme and more mechanical. So here is scenario 2A. This was actually the first one I played, my first playthrough. PvE quest, blue tokens cannot be collected. Heroes may attack blue quest tokens as if they were an enemy. Each blue quest token has 2 defense and 2 health, and the token attacks with 3 ranged and can perform payback reactions. So if you attack and you don't kill it, they can attack you back. If all blue tokens are removed and the quest has not been completed, place a new blue quest tokens on the same location. The first player to destroy 2 blue quest tokens completes the quest. It's called Hack Door Locks. How is me attacking a objective token that can attack me back hacking a door lock? They're not at the door. They're at the terminals. It could shoot back. Is it like a turret? Is it like zapping me back as a computer? I don't know. There's no story. There's no thematic reason for me to be attacking the blue quest token, except that the game developer that designed this decided that's what Quest 2A would involve. And personally, I appreciate a much heavier dose of scenario. Zombicide's probably about the limit, but at least there, they kind of explain why you might need to go into a room or might need to pick up a certain item or something like that. This doesn't even attempt to do that. There is no story. There's no real theme. There's just style. So it has an art style, but not an art theme. It has a world style, but not a world theme. There's nothing here to connect you to anything or to attach to anything, and there's no melding of theme to mechanics. It just is random. It almost always involves these things, but what these are, they represent different stuff all the time. They're not representative of anything because they can't be, because sometimes it's a terminal that it hits you back while you hack a door, and sometimes it's a color you get when you interact with the terminal. I don't know. It needs a lot more theme for my preference, and I was quite disappointed in how little there was. It's a campaign game, and so you're playing through a campaign and you're progressing as a character, but there's no story. It's the only campaign I've ever played without a story, and it's quite odd of a choice. Okay, one of the positive, hugely positive things here are all of these tiles here. So these are all of your items and your equipment, and how you go about it is you kind of like, you attack with the red, you enhance with the green, you defend with the blue, and then there's a reactionary yellow ones, which I think you can see one over here. So let's say that Hannah alone, not Han Solo, Hannah alone, probably what it should say, is going to attack. So she's going to attack with her blaster rifle. She flips that, exhausts it. Now she can't use that again unless she gets like a recharge token or something like that. And then maybe she wants to enhance it with some of these things. Now, maybe the drain plugs here that she got add another dice, which is great. But then it says after the attack, heal wounds equal to the number of wounds dealt. So she can actually heal through this attack. Oh, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and do that. This sort of thing where you get to have different tokens that do different things, that enhance different ways, and the customization when it comes to that, or even build, is actually quite good. So for instance, Babaka, not Chewbacca, but Babaka here, doesn't actually have any special ability here, but he has 5 health and 3 defense. So he's quite the tank. Then if you pair him up with an ion shield and a red shirt and a shock staff, he's quite defensive, because a shock staff you can actually use defensively when defending, +2 reroll even when exhausted. So no, even if you've used it, you always get extra rerolls in your defense roll. So you can make him kind of a tank. You can make her ranged focus because her special ability has to do with ranged. So there's a lot of variety when it comes to the amount of items you have, and I think they're quite good. Additionally, and I've mentioned this in some other reviews, like for instance, Reichbusters, that also had token items. This is a very good use of token items because it has the text right there. So I know instantly what the shock staff does. I don't have to go look it up or anything like that. It does something unique. It's not just a plain picture and a word with a value. So they can customize it and do different things, which is, I think, quite nice. And I really enjoyed this system in general. Honestly, if I was to compare it to anything, I'd compare it to the Ratchet and Clank series, video game series. If you've ever played that and you know kind of the wacky weapons and kind of out there kind of stuff that you're doing, you have a VPN cloak and stuff like that. It gets a little crazy and silly, and I actually really appreciate it. I think it fits the art style that this game has quite well. Now, I kind of mentioned, attacking and defending here, but really you're going to be doing that with these dice, and they are custom dice. You get all these custom dice, and really what it is you're going to have a whole bunch of little machete sword symbols. That's your melee. You're going to have a few that have a little shield on it. You're going to have a few that have a ranged weapon on it, and then of course you have the BAM, the surge, the special icon, the exploding dice typically thing, the wild. And so all you do is you take however many dice you do and you do your attack, and then maybe you'll do a few rerolls, and then you count. If you're doing melee, that's 4. If you're doing defense, that's 2. If you're doing ranged, that's nothing. If you get that, then you get to actually explode dice, which means you get to keep going until you eventually stop getting those, and they will count towards anything. Additionally, there's some play on that where some characters might be able to use the melee for ranged, which there's more melee than ranged, so that's good. Just various stuff like that. And then of course you roll your defense. So if it's 3, you roll a 3. If there's 2 rerolls, you do the rerolls. And I just took however much damage I did because I didn't defend against anything. But that's it. It's very quick and swift combat. It's satisfying. There's enough when it comes to rerolls and optional uses of items that it's complex enough for it passes my test. At least it's kind of towards the minimum of that. There's not a lot of interplay, not a lot of skills or anything like that you're using. There's not really active abilities in that sense, but it's swift, it's fast, and fun enough. So I liked the combat. Now, I kind of mentioned this, but the combat itself isn't, I guess, the combat's good, but what I just described is what you're doing from the very first mission to the very last mission. There is no other variety involved there. There is rolling, and there's rerolls, and there's wilds, and that's it. You don't have any skills. You don't have any active abilities per se. Your abilities interact with something. For instance, the colonel over there can use these melee for ranged. That's his ability. Her ability is she doesn't have to exhaust it if the enemy isn't hurt, so she can just attack without that. But none of that is an action. None of that is active. Now, sometimes you're going to use a weapon, and sometimes it's semi I guess, interactive in that there's a little bit like of an AoE where it's like, well, I get to attack the person adjacent to them as well or something like that. But for the most part, your attacks are the exact same, whether you're attacking melee, whether you're attacking ranged, whether you're, you're not doing any crazy moves. There's nothing different than that. You're counting how many dice, you're rolling the dice, and that's it. There's no, you're going to teleport from enemy to enemy and do a whole bunch of melee. There's no, templates or anything like that. There's no interaction between other characters where you can bounce something off of somebody onto something else. I'm trying to think of other things I've done in other games with much more advanced combat systems where you get to do some interesting things, typically in more dungeon crawl RPGs or skirmish games or something like that. This doesn't really have that at all. It's very much, it's satisfying combat, but it's the same over and over and over again with zero variety added to it, really. And really, sadly, that variety kind of is lackluster throughout. If you play with 4 players, you're playing every character in the game, so that you'll always have those characters. You can pair them up differently, but that's it. When it comes to the items, when you draft the items, especially at 4 players, you're drafting pretty much all of the items. So once you play through it once, you've seen almost every single item in the game, and you've used almost every single item in the game. So there's not a lot of that. There are 4 missions that you go through in a campaign, and then 2 alternates. So it's a total of 6 missions, and then that's it. And all the missions, I complain about Zombicide a little bit, where the missions typically boil down to get from point A to point B, escort point, X to Y, and really that's it. There's not a whole lot of other variety to there. This is very similar. Every single mission, you're pretty much dealing with these, and that's just about it. The enemies, there's not a whole lot of enemies. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 enemies total. He's only in 1. And then these are only in a few. And then you're pretty much just playing with mostly these. So there's not a whole lot of enemy variety. So you're fighting the same enemies every single time. For instance, I believe I had a Weeble in every single mission I played on the first one, or at least just about. I'm really trying to remember if there were, it's all kind of a blur in that sense. There's just not a lot of variety there. So that's kind of unfortunate as well, just because once you play through your first 4, you might want to play the other 2, but if you don't have any expansions, any stretch goals, anything like that, the core box alone doesn't really come with a lot. If you're okay with playing the same thing kind of over and over again, that's fine. Speaking of which, and I said I'd get back to this. So you have to do the PvE quests, and there are 2 per mission for 6 missions. So there's 12 total PvE quests you go through 2 each time. With the PvP, this is what you have every single time. It never changes, and these are all the same. All this says is kill a player that's green. The first person does it gets 2 victory points. Same with blue, same with yellow, same with red. These are all the same. These cards, honestly, I stopped taking them out. They're not really needed. I was able to remember, hey, you're the first one that killed me. You get 2 victory points. These you would take out every single time, and they're static. They never change. It's always those 4. Really kind of a bummer. Just in general, there's not a whole lot of variety. The biggest variety is these items, but like I said, you get so many of them, and you change them each time that it's not really a desire to see more, because there's not really a whole lot more. There's a few special ones, but it's not a lot of variety. Now, speaking of these items, and the variety there, the power ramp is actually really good. What I mean by the power ramp is when you first start out, you're typically rolling maybe up to 4 dice. I think first mission, 4 is probably your limit. I think you can do 5 depending on how you lay it out and how all out you go. When you do that, you still feel good. I mean, 4 or 5 dice is not bad, but eventually you're going to go to where you're pretty much rolling all of these. You could go in with some very big turns by the end of it. The added dice and the added re-rolls and the ability to deflect damage and stuff like that really start to ramp up after each mission. It's pretty much guaranteed. Everybody's going to do it more on that in a little bit, but the feeling that you have at the end versus the beginning is quite a big difference in how much power you feel like you have. So when you're starting out, you might not even kill a Weeble right away. By the time you're done, you're going to be overkilling Weebles constantly. So that does feel good, and that power ramp, I think, is quite smooth throughout. Now, the problem that I kind of alluded to is that it's all unearned. So unlike any kind of RPG or even necessarily a skirmish game, your power-ups have nothing to do with your game. You don't get any XP for killing them or any loot or anything like that. Instead, you play the mission, doesn't matter how you do, and then, a little bit how you do. Then at the very end, you draft all the items. So you lay all the items out, and then you draft all the items, and you draft them in the reverse order. And so you could have maybe not killed a single person and not done a single thing. You could have sat there and rested at every single time. And at the end, you will still get all of your upgrades. So it's not really based on anything. It's forced on you. And again, part of that's just that thematic thing that I talked about, where it's just a disconnect. You're going through these game mechanics and they feel like game mechanics because they're not grounded in anything. Not necessarily in a Euro style way or an abstract way per se, but they definitely feel mechanical, because they're not attached to anything, any action that you do or any theme at all either. Because there's no story saying you go back to your ship or you loot like it doesn't even say where you get these items. These items disappear, I guess. I don't know. Without any theme, without any story, without any action that I'm doing, I'm just arbitrarily and mechanically, in an abstract way, gaining new items. And so while they're cool and I like the upgrades, I never felt like I earned the upgrades because they're not attached to anything. And preferably, I feel like I'm getting stronger as I'm getting better, as I'm doing well. It's kind of a reward. And none of these cool items here felt like a reward. None of these felt like anything was deserved. And that was kind of a big bummer for me. Now, I kind of alluded to this, but I think this is important anytime you're looking at expansions or stretch goals. For the most part, all characters pretty much play the same. Because there's no real active abilities or skills or any fancy moves or anything like that, for the most part, they have these kind of passive perks. But the play is the same. The play is you move a couple spaces and you shoot or attack. That's really it. And you're going to be doing that with every single character. Not only will both of your characters feel fairly similar, the biggest you can do is make one melee, one ranged. I think that's kind of a big difference. But other than melee versus ranged, your character is going to feel pretty much the same. One might be a little bit squishier or something like that, but really the actual actions and actual things you're doing with them are the exact same. Nobody has a different move than another person. They're all equal in that. All they can do is move and attack and interact, and that's it. That's all you're going to be doing with every single character. Every single person's going to be doing that with their characters. And so it feels very much like you're playing a game of chess with all pawns. You're doing all these actions and you're able to move and, get rid of people and all that kind of stuff, but you all have the same people more or less. I mean, they look different. And there's a few different stats, and you can kind of deck them out a little different if you force the issue there. For instance, if somebody's good at shooting like Han alone, make her all ranged. It makes sense. But her ranged character of Han alone doesn't really feel too much different than Colonel Blaze, even though they both have different passives, because the actual actions you're doing are the same. Yes, he can use melee instead of ranged, and yes, she doesn't have to flip a token, but that doesn't mean that we're attacking any different, that we're doing any different moves, or that we move any different, or anything like that. So really they're the same character with slight tweaks. Okay, now this is circling back a little bit, but this is something I noted. It didn't really become an issue in my game, but I did want to note it in case that's something that you're concerned about. There are no catch-up mechanics, and it can affect you. I play with a pretty nice group, but you could play pretty mean as well. So for instance, you lay out all these items, right? So you might have 2 new weapons, 3 new greens, and 2 new blues and a new yellow as your options. So essentially what you do is the person who got the most victory points picks first, and then it goes all the way down to the last person, and the last person picks again and goes all the way up to the first person again. So you get to pick twice, and you pick 2 items. So if you're last, you could get it to where every single time everybody takes all of the weapons. And what that would mean is that you would consistently have worse weapons than everybody else over and over again. You would never get a new weapon because everybody always picked them every single time unless you happen to get more victory points. But that does kind of lessen if you can't roll more than, say, 5 dice. Now, yes, you get more green and more blue, and it kind of mellows out a little bit, but it can also be very frustrating to be having your starting pistol, I would imagine, just because you weren't winning. So there is that kind of issue as well. Definitely first pick is best, and if you never get first pick, you're never going to get best. Additionally, it even matters about map placement. So like, for instance, here, right, this person, let's say if the objective is to get to here, right, and then maybe this person's worse or whatever. Either way, sometimes the map can matter where you have to go farther or there's worse things right out the gate. For instance, there are bad guys right next to the entrance on this person, whereas this person can exit and not have people right at the entrance. Same here. So any movement here at all, I'm going to get an attack if I'm yellow. So you don't really want the one where you can't even exit out of your shuttle. That's not necessarily even at all. Another force person would enter here. So definitely don't want to do that. But if the other 3 people pick that, you're stuck there. Throughout this game, there are ways to be disadvantaged, and there's no real way to overcome that except do better, I guess. Okay, so there's one cool thing, and we're almost done here. One cool thing I really like, and that's this event deck here. Now, there's not the most variety. There's a lot of repeats here, but essentially, after you do your turn, you get to flip the event deck open, and you get to control one of the enemies. Now, not always the case. For instance, sometimes this will show, like an officer, and there won't always be an officer in there, so you don't get to control an enemy. But being able to control an enemy is a very cool idea. And on top of that, then you get to do something, whether it's changing up a portal. And we did all sorts of things. We had it to where the enemies were all packing into the second quest, knowing that somebody's going to have to go and do that. We made it to where the person's starting zone had all the same color portals, so they couldn't really portal anywhere. You can do things where, like, you hit an asteroid, so like you shift everybody one way, and so you can shift people to be adjacent and stuff like that. The event deck is really nice. I like the idea of being able to control an enemy. I think it's one of the more unique aspects of the game. The fact that you get to play your character, just one of the 2, and then you get to play one of the enemies, and you can move them and either get them out of your way or attack somebody else or do something, which I think is pretty cool. I really enjoyed that part. It was definitely, I think, the highlight when it comes to just that's kind of neat. Gameplay mechanic wise. Now I have one final thing to say about this, and that's, I've kind of explained how this game is fairly light. It doesn't have the most complex combat. It doesn't have the highest depth and map or items or story or really anything. And with that, that's fine. I enjoy playing games like this with my kids. This is actually what I did. And some friends, and it takes too long. This game can take hours. There was a point, in fact, specifically on this one, I think it was this one, yes, where you had to get 2 blue quest tokens, and it was possible to where nobody got to, and you took them all, and you had to reset it. And that happened over and over again. I think it happened twice. Then the second one, you have to get a green item. It's like in the middle, and you have to get that green objective back to your thing. And that changed hands 4 times because people, you got it and then you get killed, and then they'd pick it up and move it somewhere else. You kill them and then you take it back. And it went on and on and on. It was about a 4-hour game. I wasn't actually timing it, but it was late into the night. It was at least 2 hours after we were planning on being done. It was long. It was longer than most games I've played. And it doesn't warrant that time. It really doesn't. This is a great fast-paced game. If you could get this done in an hour, I would recommend this way higher. But it's not. Or at least it's possible it can't be. You might just have a runaway victory and you get the 2 instantly and you do that. Or you can have it to where, you didn't get 2. Oh, you didn't get 2. Oh, you didn't get 2. Oh, now you didn't get the green. I didn't get the green. And it got to the point where I was actually almost tempted to look at my friend and say, I'm just going to let you have it. I just want the game done. And I never, ever want to be playing a game where I just can't wait for it to end. That's kind of why I kept this to last. There's a lot to like about this game. It's a fun game, family friendly. Kids had a lot of fun. The event system's neat. It's very easy to set up. The storage solution's nice. The miniatures look gorgeous. It could just be some dumb fun. It's not super thinky. You're not going to be sitting there wondering what you're going to do on your turn. I mean, you can move, shoot, and interact. Pick what you want to do. It's not like turns go quick. All of that's really, really nice. But at the end of the day, it takes a long time. Or at least it can. Literally, so that was the second scenario I played, and I almost stopped and reviewed the game there. I didn't because I wanted to give it a fair shake, and that's where the variety issues came up. But I almost stopped right then and there, where I was just not going to play it again. It was pretty bad, and definitely something I want to mention. You might get to the point where it's kind of like that Monopoly game that goes on too long, or Risk or something like that, where you're just like, you know what? Who has the most money? You do. You win. We're done playing Monopoly. Pretty much kind of felt like that. We got to the point where we actually ran out of victory tokens. We used every single one of the game because every time somebody dies, everybody else gets a victory token, stuff like that. And everybody just kept killing each other over and over and over again. And so we ran out of tokens. The game couldn't even support the game running any longer. That's a big issue. I think some of my favorite games are stuff like Blood Rage, where it's very finite in how long it takes. Not necessarily because I only like short games. I like long games when they warrant it. This just doesn't warrant it. I'm probably talking too much about this, but it was a big issue for me. I can forgive a little bit of variety, especially when it comes to expansions and stuff like that. I'm okay buying a few extra boxes if it means I get more, enemy variety or something like that. But if this game ever took that long again, I'd stop playing. I would just say, I don't care who wins. I'm out. I'm going to go do something more fun. So anyway, that's, I guess, my review in a nutshell. It's kind of conflicting. There's some good parts. There's some bad parts. It's not a bad game. It's just not a great game. Am I happy I have it in my collection? Yes. Am I happy I bought more than the base game and spent more on it? No, I'm not happy about that. Even though having more enemies adds variety to it, and that's nice too. It's just, it's not what I would pick every single time. Would I play it again if somebody offered? Sure, of course. I probably will play it again. But there's still better games out there. So that's kind of my review of Starcadia Quest. I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoy that level of honesty. I don't know. I know there's a lot of fans of Arcadia Quest. I've never played Arcadia Quest, so I don't know the differences here and if these changes made it worse or better. Hopefully, I almost hope it made it worse, because if this is better than Arcadia Quest, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But man, those minis are good, so I still plan on maybe painting them just for funsies. All right, guys, that's it for my review. Hope it was helpful, and I will talk to you guys again very, very soon. I got some fun stuff coming up, some Sengokushin exclusive stuff that you're going to see. Really excited about that. Some more Kickstarter news stuff. There's a lot of Kickstarters I still need to cover, so more on that. And yeah, take care.